Hello, and welcome to the Sacred Heart Shaman podcast, where we talk about spiritual healing, shamanic wisdom, and the challenges of walking the healer's path. This is episode number 5, and the topic is demons, entities, and possession. All right, so today's podcast, I feel like, is a little heavy, also a little weird. We're going to be talking about exorcism, demons, entities, walk-in spirits. Um, Not a lot of information about these things out there, and I wanted to share my experience and my knowledge, however limited it may be, of what I've encountered over the years and provide a little perspective. So I know that many of the people who find me and contact me also have gifts and abilities, and they're looking for mentorship or information or perspective for some of the stuff they experience because they can't find anyone else out there who experiences it. So, my goal with this podcast is to share some stories, share some experiences and perspectives, and hope that it lands for the right people. I am available to have conversations around your experiences. Should you need support, just hit me up on my website and schedule a session. So, a couple different threads with this podcast. The first one is exorcisms. So, one of my mentors had a lot of experience in demonology, and I asked her at one point for training in this, and she was like, "You don't need it. Don't worry about demons, focus on the love." And I didn't know what she meant until several years later, as I became more fluent in this work and seen many more clients, that no, she was right. Like, they're actually not that important. And there's no need to walk around doing like depossessions or the cleansing of the demons. Um, the only thing we need to do is walk around and love other people and love the darkness within ourselves and within others, and those problems resolve themselves. However, I do have some pretty pointed experiences with demonic energy that were very fascinating. So I've worked with two people who were straight up possessed. Um, Neither of these people knew they were possessed, and that's really important because as a shaman, I do not have permission to do possession work. I cannot pull something out of you unless you are aware that it's there and you give it permission to come out. Because if I do that, I can cause severe damage, damage that cannot be repaired. So you can kind of view it as like an invasive plant almost, and it has its roots tangled around another plant. If you pull it out, you're going to damage the original plant unless there is an intentional untangling that occurs. So, in one instance, I was working one on one in a ceremony space with a man, and when someone is full possessed, their eyes come across completely black to me. And sometimes I see it directly, sometimes I see it out of the corner of my eye, but it's very specific in the way that it looks. And occasionally I'll see someone out in public with that going on. But this man, his eyes were completely black, and I didn't actually notice it until we were in the middle of the ceremony together. And as I'm like gently noticing, my spirit team is like, don't let him know that you know. Just be here with him. Just let him process what needs to be processed. It was very superficial stuff. But he seemed to gain a lot of relief out of it. And, what I was told, what I was seeing is that he's not ready for the deeper work just yet. Like, we're here to do this superficial level thing. It's okay. Let it be. And don't speak to that entity directly. Don't speak to that presence directly. Um, that was really interesting because I think one of my gifts is seeing things clearly. So I can look at someone and be like, I see you, and my eyes can penetrate whatever they need to penetrate. So I can see their true self, I can see their inner children, I can see their demons, entities, like that sort of thing. And if I look that thing directly in the eyes, it will be acknowledged, it will be witnessed, it can be dissolved, it can be consumed by love, it can be transmuted. And so to be told very pointedly, don't let this thing know that you see it, I had to be very careful with eye contact. I had to um, kind of carry this air of ignorance, and it was just really fascinating. So I learned a lot during that experience. Um, the second one was way more unsettling. So I don't feel like this person directly was possessed, but it was as if something had complete control over him from an outside sort of way. So he lived in this magnificent house, very large, very beautiful, very isolated at the top of a mountain. And when I drove to meet with him that day to work with him, I had already met him in person, like everything was fine. And I felt good about the work together. I went to drive to his house to work with him for the day. And as soon as I got there, I knew something was wrong. We sat down together and started doing some ritual and some ceremony and working one on one. And as I started to go into the altered space, which I do when I work with my clients because I work with the other world, the spirit world, as well as the human world, I saw this river of black goo in his basement. So it was like demonic energy. I don't know how this works because words are hard when it comes to the things that I see and experience. But demonic energy is very connected to this black goo. And if I see the black goo, I know that this energy is here. So in the case of this person's house, there was this river of black goo that ran through the basement. And it was like a river of demons. I don't know how else to describe it. It was the most terrifying thing I've ever experienced in the spirit world. And then he had rooms full of entities. So, like when I close my eyes and I sink in a little bit, I can see the spirit side of a house and which room has which energy in it, where things are stuck. Are there any spirits here? Are there any spirits of the land that are here? What does the spirit of the house look like? What do they want? I mean, it's a very clear but complicated picture. And so I'm closing my eyes and I'm seeing this house, and I can see that there are multiple rooms in the lower level and they are filled with these entities. So, like, really unsettling feelings, really dense feelings, very dark, and they're like bursting at the seams of these doors. And then we have the river of black goo. And again, my spirit team is like, don't let them know that you see them. Oh, it was the most terrifying experience of my life, I think, in my work so far. And we completed our work together. We were there for a full day. I could not get out of this house fast enough. I did not have cell phone service. Nobody knew where I was. Literally ran to my car and sped off of that mountain until I had service again, and then had to pull over and like cry because of how much fear and terror was inside me. So I have not spoken to that person in a couple years. We spoke about a year after our ceremony, and things were had not moved. They had not progressed. So I still to this day don't really know what my role was in his process, in his healing, why I was shown the things that I was shown. I suspect it was more for my learning experience than anything else. And that was pretty much my introduction to demonology or like the demonic energy. And now I see it very clearly and interact with it in a very different way. So, those were two interesting possession experiences. With either case, I was not allowed to intervene. I was not allowed to look at them directly. I was not allowed to pull them out or exorcise them. And I do strongly believe that doing so is inappropriate and it goes against shaman rules, as I like to call them. There are specific sets of rules of what we're allowed to do and we're not allowed to do. And I think that's one that's like on the do not allow list. Um, so the another interesting demonic, not demonic, well, maybe we'll call it demonic, a possession experience. So, I was working in a group setting at one point, and there's a woman there that I've worked with before, and I'm gonna say that she lands on the top 3 of the worst childhood abuse cases I've ever heard. Some of her stories gave me nightmares for several months. And those are very complicated cases. I think if people like that just go into regular therapy, they would live life not okay. It really requires a different level of work and healing in order to resolve some of that cruelty. And yeah, it's just a next level sort of cruelty. Anyway, this woman's fantastic. I absolutely love her, and we've been working together for years. And in this ceremony, she gets up and she's like, I'm not okay. I feel like this is gonna kill me. Nadia, this is gonna kill me. And she's pacing and removing herself from the group, and she's like, I can't hold on to this anymore. And I can see that it's rage, and I can see that the rage will kill her. Um, because it literally is eating her up inside. She has so much rage towards these people who were supposed to be her parents and instead tortured her and literally killed her and brought her back. Kind of energetically speaking, potentially even physically speaking. Um, it was pretty brutal. And so I'm watching her move in this energy and I'm watching her pace, and I can see that she's identified that there is a demon inside her. And when we understand what demons are, I think we would be a little less afraid of them. So we all have demons. All of us. We have individual demons and then we have collective level demons. So if I am harboring rage inside my body, I have a rage demon. And the more rage that I have, the longer that I'm holding it, the more powerful this demon gets and the more control it has over me. And then there's also a collective rage demon. So everybody that has an individual rage demon inside them is also feeding the collective one. I don't mess with collective demons. That's a different level. And I have no business being there. I'm pretty sure it would kill me. But on an individual basis, our demons are our own. Except for the two men that I was just talking about, where clearly there was something happening more connected to the collective or external that had control. In this case, this demon was created, invited, allowed, and she could see it. So because she could see it, she could say, I don't want this demon inside me anymore. I'm ready to let this go. And I was allowed to pull it out. So she's going through this process and she says, I need to get this out. I need to get rid of this. And this is my jam. What can I do? I'm going to ask you to lay down and I'm going to ask you to give it to me. Let me take that demon from you. And so she gets down on the floor and I have my staff, like everybody's holding one of her hands. We're talking to her, we're comforting her, we put a blanket on her, and I lay my hand, ooh, I'm getting goosebumps talking about this. I lay my hand on her chest and I ask it to come through me. So when I work with demons, the key is love. It's always love. And this is my greatest gift as a practitioner is my heart and Sacred Heart Shaman, Sacred Heart Medicine Sanctuary. This is the medicine of the heart. And I believe that if we can look at something so quote unquote ugly and love it, this is the magic of healing. This is how we heal everything. This is how we heal everyone and the collective. And what I do is I invite that darkness into my heart so that I can love it. So I put my hands on this woman, on her chest, on her heart, and I'm inviting this demon to come into my heart. I'm inviting it to move out of her. And this happens a lot in my ceremonies. Sometimes it's intentional and directed, and sometimes it just like flies through my body because that's my job. In this case, it had to be released. She had to manually give it up, and I had to manually take it on. And this energy, ooh, when it passed through my heart space, for a solid 30 seconds, I felt everything this woman had carried as a child, all of the pain and the resentment and the anger, rage, like of at these adult humans who tortured her when she was younger. And I had to witness that. I had to bear witness to that. I had to say, I see this and I love you anyway. I love you in spite of, I just love you. Thank you for letting me witness. And that energy moved through my body and released. And we all knew the moment that it released, like her body changed, her face changed, the energy of the room changed. It felt like we had doulaed a demon out of the space. It was incredible. It was by far like one of the coolest things I've ever done. Um, and it was so natural at the same time. I will say, after that ceremony weekend, I went home and I didn't get off the couch for 3 days because I felt like I had looked into the gates of hell and I was not okay. I was not okay. It was a huge experience, and I felt like I had seen something I could not unsee, and I did. I saw the demonic, full blown. And after that, I integrated the experience and it took me some time, but like my recovery time in that process was really big. But then after that, since those things have happened like when those things have happened previously, it's been much easier. It's been much more smooth. I don't have to see every moment. I don't have to feel every moment of pain that that person went through, that that demon is holding. It just sort of moves and it feels uncomfortable. And sometimes I throw up a little bit. Um, but yeah, that was absolutely wild. So that's like what a depossession can look like, and a little bit about what demons are and why they're not scary. Well, I mean, they're a little bit scary. They're not scary to me. Like, they are my jam. I love the darkness. I love to work with people's inner demons. It's my jam. So, moving on to lighter topics, let's talk about entities. I'm not going to go super deep on the entity conversation because it can go really deep. What I want to say about them is that the majority, I don't think I've ever encountered anything that's not. Entities are self created. And I'll give you an example. An entity that I see most clearly is an eating disorder entity. And it looks a little bit like a combination between Slimer from the Ghostbusters and, oh God, there's a horror movie that I absolutely love, about ghosts that are trapped in this house and they each have their own compartments. Damn, I can't think of the name, but there's an entity there that looks like the eating disorder entity too. And so, what an entity is, we'll use the example of eating disorders. If you are eating to numb out, if you're eating to buffer or dissociate, all that energy that you are eating is actually feeding an entity. And so every time you do it, you feed the entity. The longer that you have the disordered eating, the more sentient and powerful the entity gets because you're feeding it. I'm not allowed to get rid of people's entities. They're just going to come back. The energy is going to get wasted, essentially. Like, if you're still feeding and creating the entity within yourself, nobody can take it away from you. I don't believe that entities can come from somewhere else and attach to you unless there's a place to attach to, right? So I think there are some practices that will sever entities and then that energy just becomes like, without a host, and it goes floating around and it attaches to a person that has space for it to attach. But you will always have to have the energy pre-existing to yourself, for your all pre-existing within yourself. So if I have an eating disorder and I have this gnarly looking entity that follows me around because he's part of the eating disorder, if there's extra energy that resonates with me and my entity that I move through, that sucker will hop right on and add to my entity. And so, as long as you have something you're not dealing with, you're always at risk of creating a bigger problem energetically alone. The eating disorder entity is like the easiest one for me to identify, but there's a lot of different ones out there. I can see them pretty clearly when they're ready to be dealt with, when they're ready to be looked at. Otherwise, they kind of stay in the shadows because we're not ready to see them yet. So that's what entities are. Yeah, we can go deeper into that at some other point, but that's as far as I want to go today. So, the third thing that I want to talk about today in the realm of exorcisms and demons is walk in spirits. This is a concept that I heard of several years ago, and I Didn't really resonate with it, honestly. Um, and I've found in my work, it's actually extremely rare. So I think, as I understand it, walk in spirits walk into somebody's body if there's space for them to walk into. And in all the people that I've worked with who even have massive soul retrieval that needs to be done, rarely do I meet anybody that's like 99% vacant. I mean, I don't even know that you could be here in order that you could be here if you had that kind of vacancy. So I never understood the concept of a walk-in spirit. I never encountered it. And so, statistically, it must be pretty rare. Except several years ago, I did encounter a walk-in spirit, and I'm still having trouble digesting what it means and what it is and what to do about it, if I'm supposed to do anything about it. But it was actually with my father. So, about 7 years ago, my dad almost died from hepatitis. And nobody told me that this was going on when it was going on, which is extra crappy. But he had hepatitis C. It was killing him. He went into the hospital, and it wasn't until he was about to die that the insurance company paid for the cure medication. So I guess there's a cure for hepatitis C, but it's extremely expensive. And they paid for that cure, and my dad recovered. The interesting thing is, the next time I saw my father, he was not my dad. He had my dad's meat suit on. He was my dad in the flesh, I guess, but spiritually speaking, there was somebody else in his body. Um, and so my dad used to have pretty severe OCD. He was a pack-a-day smoker. He called me like every 3 or 4 days, kind of anxiously checking up on me. We were in touch a lot, mostly because he was worried about me, right? So those OCD kind of anxiety tendencies. After he had this medical experience, my dad has not called me since. His OCD tendencies are gone. He quit smoking. Um, Something about that whole experience completely changed him. And when I saw him in person, I went to go visit them, and I would be in his presence, he wasn't there. Like when I looked into him, um, my dad wasn't there anymore. There was somebody else there, and it was like, I don't know, it was almost like a lazy spirit who wants to be here, doesn't want to rock the boat, who's just like quiet, um, quietly living in his body. It's honestly the weirdest freaking thing I've ever experienced in my life. And the craziest part for me is that nobody else sees it or nobody else notices it. And I had this conversation with my mom, who's a very intelligent woman, and I was like, "Have you noticed that dad is really different?" And she's like, "Yeah, he's still your father." Like, no, you don't understand. He used to lock the doors 25 times a day. His OCD was absolutely insane, and we're just gonna pretend like that disappeared overnight and that's not weird. Or the fact that he doesn't engage in conversation. Like if we sit down with him, he doesn't talk unless you ask him a question. And this is a man who used to talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. Um, yeah, so as a shamanic practitioner, seeing that and witnessing that really makes me very uncomfortable. It makes me question. I have a lot of questions and thoughts about our medical system and the way that we intervene to save people when perhaps their spirit or their body is ready to go. And we come in and we stop that and give them medication, give them the miracle drug. And then what happens? Like, what if I have this feeling that my dad's spirit was ready to go? He was a drug addict. He was in a lot of pain. Um, and I don't know where he stands with it right now, but it was almost like it was his time. And we decided, no, no, it's not his time. Let's cure this. And then what happens to the spirit? Does the spirit go anyway? Um, do they get to choose to stay? In this case, because there's something else inside my dad's body, I wonder if the rest of him decided to leave. So interesting things to think about, interesting things to talk about. I love talking about this stuff. So thank you for being here and thank you for listening. These were my experiences about exorcisms, demons, entities, and walk ins. I have many more stories and many more things to share. but I will leave this one here. And thank you for joining me today. If you enjoyed this podcast and want to know more about me and my work, please hit the subscribe button and visit my website at www.sacredheartshaman.com. Thank you and have a wonderful day.